Gene Hambleton pushed himself away from the tree he'd collapsed against and peered into the jungle. A stray beam of light had passed down between the fronds and thick vines that hung in front of him, illuminating something beyond them, something light among the dark browns and greens. He squinted. It looked like a sandbar. The navigator managed to lever himself up and stumble over to the edge of the banana grove. He crouched down and placed his fingers on the last of the fronds and pushed the leaves apart. There it was, a large, long sandbar, glowing in the sun, a slash in the thick foliage. But a sandbar in the middle of the Vietnamese jungle? It was ridiculous. Hambleton thought, not for the first time, that he might be losing his mind. He was aware that his condition was deteriorating rapidly. After 8 days on the run from the enemy, with no food and fear a constant companion, he couldn't trust his own perceptions. His body was bruised, severely malnourished, and weak. He'd lost about 40 pounds on his already thin 6'2" frame. His once pristine flight suit hung on him, filthy and torn. The hallucinations he'd been experiencing for the past day were growing more frequent and more lifelike. Perhaps this was one of them. And yet, there it was, a sandbar, about 50 yards away. Exhausted, the navigator lay down on the ground and stared in fascination at the line of tan, wishing the daylight were stronger so that he could get a clearer view. It was muggy. Mosquitoes buzzed. Gibbons shrieked in the canopy. After 4 or 5 minutes, his eyes seemed to adjust, and the thing below him swam into focus. Hambleton realized that he'd been mistaken. What he was looking at wasn't a sandbar after all. It was a river. The navigator was overcome with emotion. He'd found the Mye Uzang at last, which meant he was close to being rescued. He would not be marched to Hanoi as he'd feared, and tortured to give up his secrets. Hambleton struggled to his feet, staring at the rolling water. His self-control deserted him, and he hurried forward toward the river. He had to reach it. His rescuers might be waiting. The stealth he'd practiced so obsessively for the past days disappeared as he thrashed through the foliage, shoving the thick leaves aside and pushing his body through the gaps.